So up until this point, we had an OCV tool inside VisionPro. Does anyone know what first OCR stands for? Optical character recognition. Does anyone know what OCV stands for? Optical character verification. What's the difference?
Verification is against a known, and recognition is restricted.
It's pattern matching no matter what. Basically, that's what's going on behind the scenes. But with recognition, you have no idea what the numbers are ahead of time. You can give it some fielding of what it's expecting, but it doesn't know what the numbers are. While with verification, you know what that match string is, so it's comparing it against something. Up until this point, there was never a recognition tool in VisionPro. You could fake the old one, and it would kind of work, but it would take forever. Training for it was fun, and you still had a lot of confusion. So about a year or two ago, engineering had asked the applications engineers who work with sales and said, what tool can we do that will be the biggest bang for the buck? What is it that you want to see? And they said our OCR and our OCV is horrible, especially in VisionPro, because we don't even have OCR in VisionPro. So can you fix that? So they took about a year out. They developed what is now called OCRMax. And OCRMax now takes care of both recognition and verification all in one tool. Now you see Max on it. Now our old tool was called OCVMax because it used PatMax behind the scenes. OCRMax is not because PatMax is being used behind the scenes. It is because it is a maxed out OCR tool. Now does it use some of the PatMax algorithms? I'm willing to guess yes. But the OCRMax, you do not need full-blown PatMax. So you don't need the VisionPro Max option tools. You don't need that. The plus, the Pat Quick portion of it, that's good enough. That will give you your OCRMax tool. So let's talk a little bit about OCRMax. So if you're starting OCR at this point, don't use anything else other than this tool. It's not worth it, otherwise you're going to slam your head into a wall, or you're going to turn prematurely gray. So you might as well start off with the right tool. So we're going to talk about where OCRMax is used. We're going to set up an OCRMax tool to both read and verify characters, and we're going to take a look at kind of the results coming from it. So we already stated optical character recognition is where we're reading human readable print, and that we don't know what the actual string is going to be ahead of time. So it's going to tell us what the string is. The verification is similar. We're still reading the text, but we already know what the string is ahead of time. So it's comparing what it read against what you were expecting to read. So you might do things like, whether you read a lot code or an expiration date, it could be a serial number, it could be whatever you're expecting it to do, but you're reading some type of human readable code. So OCRMax is going to allow for us to train the characters and then read and verify them by the tool. Read and or verify them by the tool. So what we're going to get back is it's going to tell us whether the whole string read, and all the characters have to read for the string to read. But then it's also going to state each of the individual characters individually of what it read. So how do you go about adding it? Well, you would go down to your ID and verification. That's where OCRMax will lie. Grab that, go and drop it into your job. Now it's going to have a couple of different tabs here, and it's kind of helping you along as you set this up. The segmenter is going to allow for you to choose where expect to see the characters, and then it's going to segment them. It's going to say, hey, this is where I think the different characters are. Okay? And you're going to see little boxes around it. You might have to go in there and state what the maximum character widths is, as well as the maximum character heights are, especially if you're using non-OCR type fonts where you don't have uniform width with them, that it might see a W as two V's. Or it might see like an I and an L together, maybe as one character. So you're trying to force it to say, no, look at these individual characters separately, so that we should have little boxes going around each of our characters here. Notice our polarity is automatic. We don't need to, when we train it, whether it's light on dark or dark on light, you can switch polarity with it without a problem. As long as you've trained the font, it does not care about the polarity. Now over on the font training area, so it will have already sectioned out what your individual characters are. Now all you need to do is go in there and state what they are. Now the tool does not know the difference between characters until you say it. So if you have a capital A being put on the screen and you call it a capital V, it's going to call it a capital V anytime it sees a capital A. So there's nothing behind the scenes checking it. This is you doing this. Why I bring this up, because this can be an advantage that in case you have a character like, let's say, a happy face, that might always be with your product, and you're looking at it as a separate character. Well, what's a happy face on a keyboard? But what you can do is you can train it as a character. You might train it as a hashtag, because maybe you never read the hashtag. So when it sees the little happy face character, it's going to report it back as being a hashtag. So it can allow for you to have a little variability because you're training what these characters look like. During the training process, when you train them, you're going to see what the characters look like down here. Now you can go and choose one and say, ooh, I don't like that one, and get rid of it. You also might end up adding multiple ones. Like right now we say add all, so everything that it sees is going to add them all. Otherwise, you can just choose which ones you want, and it will add just that character to it. Okay? You should always train more than one character at a time. You don't have to save both those characters, but they should be with other characters. It just helps the system kind of know, okay, a little bit about spacing behind the scenes. It's not as important as it used to be, but it just kind of helps with the situation. Then you have the run params. So you have your accept threshold. Once again, 1 is perfect. 0 is I have no idea what you've just given me. So you're saying all your characters need to pass that accept threshold. Then there's this confusion threshold, and the confusion threshold is saying how far does my next closest character have to be for me to say, yes, that is the character that I want. Right now it's set to 0. So that means, let's say I read a character and it came in as 0.89. And then the next closest character was 0.87. Well, it'll pick the 0.89 and it's fine. But if I said that my confusion threshold is 0.1, then it's saying, hey, I need to be at least 0.1 away with my score for me to accept that that's the character I want. Otherwise, I could have confusion, forget it, bounce it. Make sense? Kind of, sort of? So it's very, very helpful there. You can also say, what do you want your unknown characters to be? So it just throws in question mark, because you might have a question mark as part of your sentence. So maybe you want something else. So it knows what it's reading there. Scaling, this is just allowing your characters to actually move in the field of view, because what you trained on might not be what it is at runtime. So it's allowing for it to kind of squeeze and come to within your runtime parameters. Now your region tab is where inside the field of view do you expect to find the characters that you're looking for. Pretty straightforward. Your fielding tab, this is what can make the application run faster. This is where you can actually state what type field string you expect it to be. And so in this case, we have some default definitions. Asterisk means it can be any character that's been trained inside your library. A capital N means it can be any number, and a capital A means it can be any alpha character, uppercase alpha character. What you can do is you can say, okay, let me state what's going on here. I can say that my first 3 characters always have to be an alpha character, and my last 3 characters always have to be a number character. Now, how does this help you? I said it speeds up your application, but how does this speed it up? Exactly. We're only doing a subset of the whole font library, so it's going to speed it up because it's looking at less characters, but what else?
Well, that's what I was going. It means it's
Confusion. Because now your 8s aren't going to be Bs, your O's aren't going to be 1s, your I's aren't going to be, your O's aren't going to be 0s, your I's aren't going to be 1s. So you've already tried to reduce some of the confusion just by saying, well, it can't be a B because I said it had to be a number. So it must be an 8. Okay? So it does help with confusion as well. Now you can go in there and you can add your own character set too. They have some other character sets in here like hexadecimal or lowercase or something like that. You can add your own. Because maybe you have a certain code on your serial numbers, and the first characters might, like I know ours used to be, it indicated where our product was made from. So I could say, hey, that could only be an A, a D, a P, and a Z. Those are the only characters it can be. So now I've just limited that down to just be those characters, and that's all that can sit in that position. So I can say maybe something like a hash, or maybe something as an exclamation point, something that's not one of the character definitions here, and put that in. Now, if I don't have a character definition described here, when I actually put that character in, it means it has to be that one that I've stated. So since I don't have the capital A selected, that A means it does need to be a capital A. So that's also one way that you can say, hey, if it's always going to start with an A, bam, force it to be an A. And it helps it kind of dial in on exactly where it is in the screen, too, because it's looking for that A. So it dials in and starts reading it across. Your graphics tab, you can say, what do you want to see? So it will show you your graphics for it. And finally, it'll give you your results. So it'll tell you what you read. It'll also tell you if you have confusion there or if you have a mismatch. A mismatch comes up if you're doing verification. So you've actually stated what the character should be, and it says, okay, I read a character there, but it's not the one that you said it should be. So it's I've definitely got a character there, but it's not what you're saying. So OCRMax tool is useful for addressing a wide range of OCR and OCV applications. Your character extraction and training is already in the tool. So you don't have to come out to a separate library, bring it in or anything, already there. And fielding can be used to optimize the speed and accuracy. Now let me just take one step off of there. I said the auto-tuning. So you've heard this little, what is this auto-tuning does? Well, what we're going to find is sometimes everything's not going to match up exactly. So you kind of expand the width, you alter things. You can also alter the characters being skewed relationship to each other, whether they're around the baseline. So there's all these different things you can set up, especially with dot matrix characters. The little dots in there that it actually says, well, how much is your intra gap and your inter gap? So you can set all these things up. So, oh, it's insane what it reads, yes. So you can either try to go in there and tweak all these yourself, which that's fine. The current tool, you can do that. But what AutoTune's done is it says, okay, I've trained on what my first characters are. I know what those settings should be. So now I have another line come in. Doesn't quite read it. It's a little bit altered. Maybe there's a little bit skewing in there, but you're saying that's still a good line. So you go in there and you auto-tune, you tell it what it should be, and it says, okay, I'll do that. Let me tweak these settings behind the scenes to make sure I can read it. But not only make sure I can read that line, but I can still read the line before. So now you should be able to put more strings in there, and then you're seeing each one until you come to the next one that might give you a hard time. Then you might want to auto-tune for there. So what it's saving is, behind the scenes, it's saving an image of each of the lines that you're having to auto-tune for. And please make sure the lines are legit. You don't want them to be completely different from what you're reading, but legit things, but just slightly changed. That not only does it make sure it reads the new one that you just given it, but that it's still reading the old ones. So it's basically tuning your recipe. So now you don't have to sit in there and tweak everything yourself, because maybe if you tweak this one way and this the other, now it's not going to work. So it's doing all that behind the scenes. So you just basically kind of sit back, throw your different lines through it, and bam. After about 3 or 4 auto-tunes, you shouldn't have to do another one. You should be dialed into whatever is coming out of the system. So let's try this out. Okay, I'm going to purposely, I'm going to stay on the bad side. There's a reason I want to stay on the bad side, because I want to show you how you can also just add characters on the fly. So I'm going to go up into my toolbox. I'm going to add my OCRMax tool, so that's going to be underneath ID and verification. So I'm going to grab OCRMax. Please do not confuse it with OCVMax. OCVMax is now obsolete, now since OCRMax is out here. Okay. So now we have our OCRMax tool. Where should I be getting my input image from? The fixture, yep, because I want it to stay with my part. So let me go ahead and run it once. Well, it thinks it passed, but it doesn't because there's nothing there. So let me go into the tool itself. So the first thing I need to do is I need to set up where the characters are that I'm looking for. So I'm going to set them right around these characters right here. That's what I'm going to set up. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and I want to go ahead and run this once and take a look at my last run image. And what you see is, notice, it's found 3, but it hasn't quite found my 1 there. So it's not quite thinking that it's my 1. So maybe I should see what happens if I'm going to do electric mode, and maybe if I reduce what my minimum width is. So let's see if this is going to allow me. So just by reducing my width, it wasn't exactly 15 pixels, it was more like 10 pixels. So the fact that I said 10 pixels, then yes, it does pick it up as its separate characters. So now I see I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 characters. Doesn't know what they are. Does not know what they are. But it sees them all, okay? So let me go ahead and go into my font training, and now I want to extract the characters. So let me extract them so I see them up here. So I can go in there and I can say ABA 1, 2, 2. Okay? And if I say add all, adds all those characters to the library. The fact that I have 2 A's now means that I have some statistical analysis of it. If I go ahead and run this right now, notice it reads it as ABA 1, 2, 2, and take a look at my results. My scores are right on up there, okay? Because those are all characters that I have trained. Now let me go back to font training, and let's say that I wanted to remove this character. I'm going to remove one of my A's, okay? Now if I run this again, notice that that one A that I had removed, its score goes down a bit because I hadn't actually trained that characters into my font. It's close enough to the other ones, but it's not perfect, you know. So that's kind of letting you know, what the statistical does.
What's the limitation of the number of characters you can train?
I'm not sure there is one now. There used to be one, but I'm not sure there is one. We usually caution for you not to. We usually say if you're doing more than 10, you probably have an issue, okay? And you should not be changing it for different font sizes and different fonts. They should just be like variations within the character, which the tool itself tends to take care of that. So.
As adding additional start to slow the tool down?
Yeah, it does because there's more. You're adding more characters to the library.
Do you have standard fonts?
No, they don't have it so you can add the standard fonts like you used to be able to. So you would still train them. Not that I'm aware of. You still have to go through this method to do it. So technically, that's all I need to do. Now my fielding. Let's say that I wanted to field a string, and let's say that I say numbers and characters as well as wildcards. If I say star, 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 doesn't change anything, okay? Works fine. Now let's say I said AAA, AAA, okay? Notice that it says, okay, I read ABA 1, oh, and then it thinks my 2s are B's. Now if I take a look at my results are pretty low for them. But since my accept threshold here for my run params was 0.5, it's still picking them up. But there's some, it's pretty low score. But what I'm stating is I'm saying these all have to be characters, and it knows that it's not. It says this is no character that I have trained, and this could be a B, but not sure of it. Let's say I change this and I say N. Now notice that it thinks it's 1, 2, 2, but my B now becomes a 2 and has no idea what the A's are. Let's say I wanted to make my own fielding. Okay, so I might call this, oh, they're saying that it's X. I might call this hash, okay? And the characters that I'm going to allow might be 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9, okay? Only those odd numbers. So if I go in and I change this to be like asterisk, 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 hash, 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 and run it, notice it picks up my 1, but it doesn't pick up my 2, because none of my 2's match these characters that's inside this set. Makes sense? So you can kind of control things that way. Okay? Now your confusion. So let's go back to this AAA, AAA. Whatever. Run that. If I go back to my run parameters, right now my confusion threshold is 0. If I take a look at my results, notice that I have my scores here, and the next closest confusion character right now, I only have my A's confusing that B. It's stating that it's 0.68. Okay, that's pretty good difference between them. What I'm going to do, actually, let me go back in and I'm just going to do, oh, it thinks I have an extra one there. There we go. So if I go back to my results, it's showing me what it thinks all the scores are and then what's my next closest one. So the one that seems to be coming up close here is I've got kind of low here. I've got this confidence here, which is kind of a confusion thing between a 2 and a B, and that's what I was expecting. So let's say that I go in and I say my confusion threshold now is 0.4 and run it. Now notice inside my results, it's saying that I have some confidence scores too low. I'm saying that if my confidence score, the difference between the two, is 0.4 or less than 0.4, then I don't trust it, okay? Because it's saying that it's less than 0.4 away from what my next character is. So notice that this one gets confused, this one gets confused, and it throws off my confidence because they're too close. Now 0.4 is a fairly large step there. I mean, I'm really reaching for it there. But something like a 0.1 is not out of the ordinary. It's just so that you can try to make sure what you're reading is what's to be expected. Okay. Now let me go into this, and I want to train the other characters. So if I go ahead and I flip this over and I try to read this, okay. Let's go back to this. Oh, let me stop it from running. Okay. I'm going to go back to my run params and move this back to 0 and run it. So right now it thinks it's ABA, but it's seeing my 3 it thinks is a B, and my C it thinks is a B as well. If I take a look at my results, notice my results for my C is fairly low, as well as for my 3 is fairly low. So if I want to add them, what I can do is say extract my characters. If I choose this, well, let me just say C here. I want to just add the selected one, and I go down there and I would say my character code down here will be C, a capital C, and then I just want to add just the selected one, so now it adds that C in there, just the selected one. If I want to add my 3, I can add just the selected one. Oh, changed my A to a C, that should be A. There we go. Somehow I messed things up. There we go. So now if I run this, we'll see it does see an ABC 1, 2, 3 with really good results. Kind of neat, cool.
What do you have variable strain length?
Variable strain length. You can say variable length. And you can say what the minimum is, what the maximum is, and any type of indexing.
So your field strain up above and such, then it becomes a little...
You can force it almost to do verification. Because if I deselect, if I just deselect it, it just does pure reading. But if I do the field string, it helps to try to determine what it should be. If I deselect all of these, and I say A, B, C, 1, 2, 3, it now ends up becoming a verifier. Because now I'm forcing these characters in here. If I change this to maybe be a 2, run it, notice it thinks it should be a 2, but the score is just low.
Probably not the right word, but doesn't it create confusion, though, if you define 6 characters and the next strain comes in as a variable strain length and it has 8 or 9?
No, doesn't. Well, it does if you're using field string. So you would probably have to dynamically be bringing that in of what it's looking for. But when you're doing variable length, very often you're just doing reading, not verifying necessarily.
Something through scripting, when you're saying...
Yeah, you can do some through scripting and whatnot, yeah. Yes, because it's kind of doing a blob analysis behind the scenes. It's finding out where it thinks the characters are, and then it tries to read them.